So, come up to the lab and see what's on the slab. I see you shiver with anticipation. But maybe the rain is really to blame. So I'll remove the cause. But not the symptom.
Now, this might be controversial. I don't give a damn, really, because, you know, we've reached the point here where we've got to start saying what is and not running away from it. What I'm about to say now... What I'm about to say now, virtually no one else, there are some, and some that, you know, some of them are characters I don't really would like to spend an evening with, to be honest, and some are. But most people, the overwhelming majority of people in what we call conspiracy research, won't touch this subject, right? Well, I'm going to bloody touch it because I'm sick of it. And I'm sick of people being frightened and intimidated into not touching it. Thank you. Right, first of all, we as a human race have got to get our fricking heads around what this is, because it ain't what we're told it is. It's not about what's right and beneficial for Jewish people. Jewish people are its victims, not its beneficiaries. Jewish people have been hung out to dry again and again by this crowd that claim to have their best interests at heart, like hell they do. That's why I call this Rothschild Zionism. It was created by them, it is controlled by them to this minute, and it was created as a secret society within the web to massively contribute to the manipulation and control of our global society and individual countries, etc., etc. It's Rothschild Zionism. Anti-Zionism is not anti-Semitism, not that anti-Semitism means what we think it does, because Zionism is not about Jewish people. Even in its play-out way or world, it is a political system, a political philosophy. At its core, it is a secret society putting its agents in places of power. One of the very few things that Joe Biden, Vice President of the United States, has ever said, which is true, is you don't have to be Jewish to be a Zionist. Because of the propaganda, we equate Zionism with Jewish people. It's not how it is. To a very, very large extent. How many people know this? How many Jewish people around the world are protesting, have organizations created to protest against Zionism? Zionism and Judaism are diametrically opposed. Zionism is state-organized terror. How many times do we see this in the newspapers? Never. End of Zionism equals peace. Israel, stop killing Palestinians. I am Jewish and I want that. Why don't we hear about this? We condemn any Zionist aggression against Iran. I thought every Jewish person in the world wanted to bomb Iran. That's what the media seem to give us an indication about. Another Jew against Zionism. Over and over. Zionist spokesmen do not represent world Jewry. How many people... I thought Ahmadinejad of Iran is supposed to be the great demon of all Jewish people. Ah, look at it. The demonization comes from Rothschild Zionism. We've been totally misled about what it is. Rothschild dynasty created Israel. It paid for the first people out of Europe to go and people Israel after the war. It paid for the building of the Knesset. It paid for the building of the Supreme Court building with all its Illuminati symbols all over it. And some of the people who've broken out of the family, I quote one of them in my book, have actually said, and as I've been saying for years, because it's bloody obvious, that Israel is not the homeland of Jewish people, it is the fiefdom of the Rothschild dynasty, created out of Rothschild Zionism, a secret society. And Rothschild Zionism has been used via Israel to devastate, slaughter, torture an entire nation of human beings while claiming to be against terrorism. This is the dictionary definition of genocide: the systematic and widespread extermination or attempted extermination of an entire national, racial, religious, or ethnic group. Never can what is happening in Palestine and Gaza have been described so accurately. More and more people killed through war, killed through bombing attacks, killed through shootings, killed through lack of food and adequate medical care. Gaza, the most crowded piece of land on earth, is little more, ironically, than a concentration camp. And the world looks on. This is the face of Palestine. Well, tell me what you see. Combat boots. Yeah, another terrorist 5-year-old. And all the time, Palestinian homes are being demolished in occupied land and given over to these extremist settlers who believe they have a right to it because it says so in some bloody Bible. And then we've got this wall, security fence, which has taken great tracts of Palestinian land, right, all against international law and all the rest of it. And here is a children's playground being sacrificed as the wall continues, security fence continues its endless way. This green is Palestinian land in 1946. Then we see what has happened since. This is 2000. We're in 2010 now. It's much smaller than that. What was I saying? The systematic and widespread extermination or attempted extermination of an entire national, racial, religious, or ethnic group. And I say to these Rothschild Zionists, don't you bloody dare talk about racism of others when you are behind this. Israel is an apartheid society, not just between Israelis and Palestinians, but through Israeli society. It's incredibly apartheid. The way they treat the black Jews from Ethiopia is absolutely grotesque, as is spokesmen doing that, then talking about other people's racism. We've got to go for that. I mean, and people, Jewish people, have seen it. They can see what it is. There's some fantastic Jewish people in Israel who are resisting this. Young people who go to jail because they won't serve in the army because of what the army's doing to the Palestinians. Magnificent people. Never get talked about in the mainstream media, hardly. And no matter what is said about Israel, this is Israel's response. Why? Because Israel is the fiefdom of the Rothschild dynasty, which also controls the American administration, the British administration, and so Rothschild's one arm is not going to criticize Rothschild's other arm. In the Matrix movie, there's something called the Zion mainframe. Well, Zionism, Rothschild Zionism, is in so many ways a mainframe of this network. And it pervades all the way through. And it's not about, oh, these Jewish people here and these Jewish people there. It's Rothschild Zionists who are there, and they answer to the Rothschild dynasty. Therefore, they play out the agenda of the web in a coordinated way. Now, before I start this, a lot of names coming up. I'm going to go just through a bit of the American administration and a few other things, just to give you a feel for it, for people that haven't seen the extent of this. Before I start, one fact. Jewish people in America are less than 2% of the population. A significant number of them will not be Rothschild Zionists, and therefore the ratio of Rothschild Zionists is even smaller, significantly smaller than the 2%. Okay. Obama's immediate handler is a guy called Rahm Emanuel. He has served in the Israeli army. He's the White House Chief of Staff. He does whatever he says. His father, Emanuel's father, was a terrorist in the Irgun terrorist group that bombed Israel into existence in 1948. And this is the relationship between Rahm Emanuel, he's the kind of Peter Mandelson of America, and Obama. Here. You want a Nobel Peace Prize? I can sort it, son. I can sort it, son. No problem. All pictures like that, by the way, are by a guy called David Dees, who's a political artist, brilliant, American, works out of Sweden. Uses images so powerfully to tell 1,000 words as they go. This guy is the second handler in the White House. His name's David Axelrod, Rothschild Zionist, and he was the man who orchestrated the entire election campaigns of Obama against Hillary Clinton and then against John McCain. The main funder and orchestrator of the funding in terms of individuals of Obama was a guy called George Soros, Rothschild Zionist, who manipulates countries and uses his networks and funding to create coups in countries where they want to change the regime change. And he bets on currencies like he bet on the pound years ago and makes a fortune out of the demise of the economy of other countries because he has no empathy. Henry Kissinger, massive Rothschild Zionist, has served that dynasty's agenda for 40 years, if not 50 years. And he's now an advisor to Obama, even though he's officially a Republican. The American economy, the American economic team, is led by Timothy Geithner, Treasury Secretary, Rothschild Zionist, and Larry Summers, Rothschild Zionist. The entire Obama budget is run by the budget director, Peter Orszag, Rothschild Zionist. This man was advising the Russian treasury when the Russian governments were giving state assets away to Rothschild Zionist oligarchs, including Roman Abramovich, the owner of Chelsea Football Club, by the way. It's very easy to become a billionaire when a state says, have these assets worth $1 billion, billions of pounds. Thank you very much. It's a piece of cake. You could buy a football club if you want. And this man's company was also advising the Icelandic central bank in the run-up to the Icelandic crash. The Federal Reserve in America, which controls the American economy in so many ways, it's a privately owned, not government-owned central bank, and it's privately owned by the Rothschilds and the affiliates of the Rothschilds, is Bernard Bernanke, Rothschild Zionist. He replaced Alan Greenspan, Rothschild Zionist, who was head of the Federal Reserve from Reagan Bush right up into the Boy Bush administration, and he systematically took away the checks and balances which allowed the mayhem of 2008 to unfold. We keep hearing about Goldman Sachs and all the mayhem that it's created, both in the crash of 2008 and the crash of the economy in Greece, fundamentally involved Goldman Sachs. Goldman Sachs is a fiefdom of the Rothschilds, headed by Lord Blankfein, Rothschild Zionist. The World Bank, headed by a Rothschild Zionist. The IMF, International Monetary Fund, headed by a Rothschild Zionist. European Central Bank, headed by a Rothschild Zionist. A stream of so-called czars, as they call them in America, controlling different policies and areas, policy areas of the Obama administration, Rothschild Zionists, including Cass Sunstein, who has actually written a paper saying people who have conspiracy theories should either be banned from expressing them or taxed for expressing them. Taxed! Climate change policy in the Obama administration is controlled by Carol Browner, Rothschild Zionist, and Todd Steen, Rothschild Zionist. Major area of policy. The American administration is utterly awash with Rothschild Zionists, and that is not by accident. It's because they're agents of the dynasty or agents of the control system. It's not about race. Mossad is not the intelligence agency of Israel. It's the intelligence agency of the Rothschilds, and that's why it turns up all over the world in false flag set up terrorist events and assassinations and all that stuff, because it's not carrying out the policy of Israel, it's carrying out the policy of the Rothschilds that control Israel. Now let's look at 9/11. The World Trade Center lease was purchased just a few weeks before 9/11 by Larry Silverstein, Rothschild Zionist, and Frank Lowy, Rothschild Zionist, and the deal was done with this guy called Eisenberg, Louis Eisenberg, Rothschild Zionist, the head of the New York Port Authority. The head of the CIA, who investigated what happened on 9/11, George Tenet, Rothschild Zionist. The Patriot Act, which was brought out, the Orwellian Take Your Freedoms Away Patriot Act in America, was co-authored, justified by 9/11, though it was written before because they knew it was coming, by Michael Chertoff, whose mother was a Mossad agent and who became the second head later of Homeland Security, an organization Orwellian that was justified by 9/11. At the time of 9/11, in the run-up to it, and then the war on terror and all that stuff, the Pentagon was dominated by Paul Wolfowitz, Rothschild Zionist, Dov Zakheim, the comptroller, who managed to lose trillions of dollars and still got away with it. And by the way, when one announcement was made of how much he'd lost or had gone missing in the Pentagon, they announced it on September the 10th, 2001. I wonder if they realized that because of that, it would never see the light of day. Dov Zakheim, Rothschild Zionist, and people like Douglas Feith or Feith, Rothschild Zionist in the Pentagon. Now, as I've said earlier, the Bush administration was dominated and controlled by what became known as the neocons, the neoconservatives, which were a Rothschild Zionist organization, led by people like Richard Pearl, Rothschild Zionist, William Crystal, Rothschild Zionist, John Bolton, Rothschild Zionist, in belief in nothing, if nothing else. And then the 9/11 Commission report, which was the official report investigating 9/11. They wanted Kissinger to head it first until the public didn't take that seriously and he had to step down. But that report, which agreed that the official story of 9/11 was true, was written and overseen by Philip Zelikow, Rothschild Zionist. The judge, Alvin Hellerstein, who is hearing and overseeing the cases of the 9/11 families, who are taking out lawsuits to try to find the truth of 9/11, etc., Rothschild Zionists making sure that truth never comes out. Think of the ratio I said earlier as I go through this. The man who coined the phrase, he was a Bush speechwriter, the axis of evil, which targeted Iraq before they invaded Iran and North Korea, was David Froome, Rothschild Zionist. So when you look at this, because Israel is the fiefdom of the Rothschilds, you see that this dynamics, or you'd think, is the man of 300 million people, the superpower, is the most powerful of the two. No, no. He is controlled from there because the Rothschilds control them. Do you know Israel has the second biggest F-16 fleet in the world, the biggest outside of America? It's a slither of land. How did they get them? Dov Zakheim, as comptroller of the Pentagon, Rothschild Zionist, made a load of weaponry and planes in America scrap when they weren't, so they could be passed for a song to Israel. These two guys, they produced a book last year, The Israel Lobby and US Foreign Policy, and they say this: Israel receives about $3 billion in direct foreign assistance each year, which is roughly 1/5 of America's entire foreign aid budget. In per capita terms, the United States gives each Israeli a direct subsidy worth about $500 a year. This largesse is especially striking when one realizes that Israel is now a wealthy industrial state with a per capita income roughly equal to South Korea and Spain. Another writer, a former BBC and ITN journalist, produced a book, Zionism, the Real Enemy of the Jews, and my God, is that true? And he points out, Jewish people make up less than 2% of the American population, but account for 50%, I would say Rothschild Zionists, 50% of the political campaign contributions. And that's why, no matter how these people argue at election time, including this country and others, they're all agreed on one thing. What goes on in Gaza? Keep quiet, keep your head down. And I block that out because I don't want anyone to see what's behind it. It's horrific. This man, magnificent Israeli, called Mordecai Vanunu, went to jail for 18 years for revealing the truth that Israel is a nuclear power. He's still got massive restrictions on his movement and what he can say. And you know, and he announced officially that he was continuing it. There is an official policy that on Israel's nuclear weaponry, America doesn't ask and Israel doesn't say. That's an official policy. Iran hasn't even got it yet, and they want to invade the bloody place. This lady, Kay Griggs, was married to a colonel in the United States Marine Corps, and as a result, she was given a tour of the Middle East section of the State Department. there's a video on the internet where she tells of her experience. And what she says is everywhere she went was Zionists. Everywhere she went was Zionist literature, in room after room in this department. And eventually she said to one of them, "Where's the Palestinians?" And they're looking after them. And she said, one of them said, "We look after that." Palestinians have got no bloody chance. It's a stitch-up. The main lobby group in America is called AIPAC, America-Israel Public Affairs Committee, which sounds like an official, but it's a lobby group. It's headed by a guy called Lee Rosenberg, who is a very close friend of him and comes from the same political cesspit that we call Chicago. So when this question is asked, Americans, do you dare to say Israeli terrorism? No, no, because of the way it's controlled, like I say. The Rothschild Zionists control the media and Hollywood. Don't take my word for it. Los Angeles Times columnist Joel Steen, Rothschild Zionist, wrote an article proclaiming that Americans who don't think Jews, I would say Rothschild Zionists, control Hollywood, are just plain dumb. I had to scour the trades to come up with 6 Gentiles in high positions at entertainment companies, but lo and behold, even one of that 6, AMC President Charles Collier, turns out to be a Jew. As a proud Jew, I want America to know of our accomplishment. Yes, we control Hollywood. Leading Israeli paper columnist said, the Jews, Rothschild Zionists I would say again, the Jews do control the American media. This is very clear, and claiming otherwise is an insult to common knowledge. And what do the media do? They keep the truth from us and keep us diverted from what's really going on. It's an elephant in the bloody living room, and people are terrified of going there because they're terrified of being called racist and anti-Semitic and all that. They'll call you anti-Semitic. I don't give a shit. I don't give a shit. Very quickly, it's the same in this country. There was a very, very good documentary, and it was a kind of stand back in amazement that it actually got out, by a guy called Peter Oborne, a journalist, in the Dispatches series on Channel 4 that looked at the Rothschild Zionist control of British politics through organizations known as the Friends of Israel. Each party has one, but of course they all connect, so it's actually one network. And again, just like in America, never any criticism. The British government under Tony Blair, and much of it under Gordon Brown to the end, was controlled by Peter Mandelson, Rothschild Zionist. Note the hands. Rothschild Zionist. He even flaunts it, this guy, goes on holiday with them in all the papers with this leading light of the family Jacob Rothschild. So many Rothschild Zionists end up in government here, like the possible leader of the Labour Party, David Miliband, Foreign Secretary before the election, Ed Miliband, head of climate change and environment, and this guy, Jack Straw, who's been in so many of the major offices since Blair came to power in 1997. The new Prime Minister of Britain, David Cameron, Rothschild Zionist. This guy, Tony Blair, was completely controlled by them, as Bush was, which is why they moved as one unit to do what the Rothschilds wanted, which was to invade Iraq and Afghanistan. And to shut people up, the Rothschilds have created organizations like the Anti-Defamation League. They haven't sent me a bloody Christmas card for years, these people. I don't want to upset them or what. But I'm speaking in New York in October. That could be funny. Anyway, they set these organizations up to target those people who are saying the sort of things that I'm saying. The idea is to throw you're a racist at people, so to shut them up or to discredit them. Like I say, I don't give a shit. You throw it, son, and I'll hit the bugger back. Thank you very much. As a result, when you criticize Israel, you are promoted as criticizing Jewish people and therefore being racist. This is how it works. And I have to say, the robot radicals on the so-called left of politics are played like a violin by these people. They go out on their protest, you're an anti-Semite. Okay, come in and listen to what I'm going to say. No, they never bloody do. And then you get people like the magnificent Norman Finkelstein, who's a Jewish man who's had his academic career destroyed for speaking out. His parents suffered in the concentration camps of Nazi Germany, and when he exposes these frauds and fakes in the Rothschild Zionist movement and what they do against Jewish people in general, he's called a self-hater. They can't say he's anti-Semitic, although sometimes they even use that. He's a self-hater. No, he's a decent man doing decent things. You want to try it. And the idea The idea is to create, and they're doing it, hate laws in which truth is no defense. Even though what you say is true, it's no defense. If people are upset by it, then too bad, you've broken the hate laws. They're now targeting the internet, which has been so magnificent in communicating this information. And who's doing that? In America, J. Rockefeller, Rothschild Zionist. In this country, up to the last election, he rushed through a bill to this effect just before the election, Peter Mandelson, Rothschild Zionist. And just this week, Obama has nominated this lady, Eleanor Kagan, the Solicitor General, to go onto the Supreme Court. Two things. One, that will make Rothschild Zionists making up nearly half the Supreme Court judges of America, 4 of the 9, when they are well under 2% of the American population. And she is vehemently in favor of laws banning freedom of speech in association with her mate, tax the conspiracy theorist Sunstein. It is an elephant in the living room, and we need to address it if we are going to unravel this cabal, because they don't want to frighten us into not going here for any other reason than they know if we go here, so much is going to unravel.